Hello YouTube, I hope you're ready for another long-winded comparison video. That seemed to be one of the most popular ones I did in the past. So we have another Smith & Wesson versus Ruger comparison, but today it's on the full-size SR45 and the full-size M&P45. So these pistols are both in the same class, which is full-size polymer 45s. And if you've seen my comparison of the SR9C and the M&P9C, a lot of this information that you see here is going to overlap with my first video. So if it seems repetitive for you, I'm sorry. I mean, you can reference that video and skip through all this crap to get to the stuff that really is different if you want to. But I'm still going to be thorough because that's how I do my videos. So what comes in the box for these? Well, the Ruger comes with two 10-round mags and a magazine loader. The Smith comes with two 10-round mags and two spare backstraps, but it also has an optional 14-round magazine. So this, to me, is really weird looking. At least, you know, right here you see it, you're like, oh my God, what is that? Is that a compact mag with a sleeve? No, that little sleeve's just to make it not be gapped there. But that is a factory Smith & Wesson magazine that holds 14 rounds. You also may wonder why these only hold 10 rounds and why competition like Glock or the Springfield XD hold 13 and 14. Well, the XD has a much longer frame than both of these. It's like probably an extra half an inch to an inch longer. It's pretty long if you look at it. And then Glock's grip is really wide. So Glock will fit more rounds out this way, you know, on the sides. They can make their magazines wider, and the XD can fit more on the bottom because their grip is longer. So, you know, just an explanation there. That's why these guns are really easy to shoot 45s, because they're so slim, but they are limited on capacity, because if they had to, you know, fit more rounds in there, they would have either had to A, make the grip longer or make the grip wider. So that was the reason that they stuck with 10 rounds. Now I say that the Ruger comes with a mag loader. So I'll show you that here. Here's in the box. I'm going to talk about that stuff in a little bit later. All right, so here is the mag loader. You can push down on this with your thumb and load this in here or whatever, and that pushes down on the round. Loading magazines with 45, I never really care all that much for loading magazines at 45, because 45 is such a big round. If it were a problem, yeah, I can see that, but I don't know. To me, I don't really care about loading 45, so I'm probably never going to use that mag loader. The M&P, like I said, comes with some extra back straps. It has the medium one on it right now, and that's what's on it from the factory, but you also have your large and your small. And of course, both of them come with a lock and key and a fired case and all the legal jargon and stuff that, you know, every gun comes with. But for the things that really matter, they both come with the same size magazines from the factory. They both come with two of them. You know, that's about the only difference. This one comes with a mag loader, this one comes with back straps. So pretty much the same thing from the factory that you're going to get. Comparison of features here. First, the weight. The Ruger's 30.15 ounces. The Smith's 29.6. Is that half an ounce enough to tell? No, I can't tell at all, especially since these guns aren't going to be carried concealed. I mean, if you want to carry them concealed, you can. I don't think that's where they fit, because they also have 4.5-inch barrels. I'm going to get into that more later. But, you know, as just a fun gun, or as a duty gun, or a bedside gun, the half an ounce does not matter at all. There's no difference in my mind. I don't think that that's really an important fact, but, you know, we're comparing here. So disassembly, Smith & Wesson's easier to break down, just like in my compacts video when I compared those. The Ruger's takedown plate, for whatever reason, is easier to remove on this 45 than on the compact and full size. So I'll show you the Smiths first. Just like on the compact, rotate your takedown lever down. You can either push the sear deactivator in here. You can probably see it there right under the ejector. Or you can do what I do, close the slide and pull the trigger, and it'll come apart like that. You know, reverse the process to put it back together. Of course, you got to get it on the slide rails. There you go. And you're done. With the Ruger, you lock it back. You have to push down your ejector here like that. And then, like I said, for whatever reason, this thing has to be pushed out like almost with a tool on the compacts, because what's actually putting tension on that takedown piece is the recoil spring. And for whatever reason, I can push this out with my finger, and that recoil spring does not sit very tightly under that barrel. So I'm going to mention that more later, but breakdown, a little easier on the Smith, but still easy enough for you to do by hand on the Ruger. So that's that. Now for the slide. Mag disconnect safety, it's removable on the Ruger, which of course I did the day I bought it. It's an option on the Smith to make it communist state compliant. I suggest removing it on the Ruger, and I suggest buying a Smith & Wesson that does not have one. So it does have one in here. There are plenty of videos online how to remove it. If y'all can't find those and you need me to make one, I can. But you push this little plunger here, pull this back plate off, and it rolls out, and then it just pops out. So it's really easy to remove. Smith & Wesson comes with one on communist state compliant guns, but I would just suggest not getting it, because especially for a bedside gun, I don't see the purpose in having a gun that's disabled if the magazine's gone, when there could be a round in the pipe and it could save your life. So there's no telling, but at least for me, I don't like mag disconnect safety, so just don't get one or remove it if it comes with one. Material: black oxide finish on the Ruger, melanite on the Smith. They pretty much feel the same. The Smith & Wesson's finish is a little smoother. The Ruger can be had with a stainless, polished, and blasted slide. Reference my SR9C versus M&P9C video, or just the SR9C review, because you can see it there. This is just they call it black oxide, just a, you know, some sort of metal treatment, very similar to Tenifer, melanite, and whatever the XD uses. The only difference I can really tell is that the one on the Smith & Wesson is just a little bit smoother and, you know, kind of more of a glossy feel, I guess. This feels more satin. Is there really much of a difference? No. They both seem to be just as durable. I guess really only one real difference that you can see is that Smith & Wesson coats their barrels with it too. But I'm going to talk more about the barrels later when I get in that section. Nexus Serrations. Well, the Smith & Wesson has the fish scale serrations, and the Ruger has standard diagonal small cuts. For whatever reason, the M&P45s in both full size and mid size have forward slide serrations. That's what FSS here is, forward slide serrations, and Ruger's full size ones do not. So it's actually the opposite of my old comparison, where the Ruger SR9C had them and the Smith & Wesson didn't. This is the opposite. The Ruger does not have them and the Smith & Wesson does. So here are your fish scale serrations. They're, you know, it's consistent on all other M&Ps. There's my 9C. You can see them there. Also on my M&P core, fish scale serrations. But like you've seen on my other ones, there are no forward slide serrations on those, and there are forward slide serrations on the M&P45. I don't really know why. I kind of like having them there. I think they look cool too. That's really a personal preference. Ruger has, you know, a pretty good set of serrations here. They're in a good spot. They're easy to manipulate, easy to grab. They just don't have forward ones. Does it really matter that much? No. Do I really care? Not really. I mean, I'd kind of like them. I think it'd look cool, but for that category, that's pretty much a draw. I don't really think it matters. A lot of the categories I've talked about so far have really just kind of been a draw and have been pretty even. This one's not so even though. The sights. Ruger has adjustable 3-dot. Smith & Wesson has standard 3-dot. The Smith & Wesson is shell for one-handed manipulation. This one also has the optional night sights, and both have good aftermarket options. I would suggest Trijicon HD sights, which I have on my M&P Compact right here, and I have a set of them already to go for the Ruger right here. These are for an SR9C, but it has the same cut as all other Ruger SR pistols. It's the same thing with the M&P minus the shield. So yeah, Ruger sights are terrible. I'll just be honest. These sights suck. The thing I don't like about them, well, two things really. One, these rear dots are so small and that rear aperture is really small. And number two, if you look at this, it's like rounded on the top, as opposed to it being just completely flat. It's really rounded on the top. If you look at a great set of sights like this, see how flat that is on the top? Or if you look at the sights on this M&P, you see how flat it is on the top. Whereas this one, the dots are tiny and it's rounded on the top. So yeah, these sights are terrible. I'm changing them. I don't like the sights. That's a really huge complaint of mine. Also, this does not have a heavy shelf for one-handed manipulation. I mean, it sort of does. This one's much more pronounced. You see that there. But luckily, the Trijicon HD sights that I got for the Ruger, as you see, maybe you can see them in there, has a hard shelf. And I will show you these installed on here after I Cerakote this baby. That's going to be in my update video. You will see that. So yeah, more to come on that one in the future. Okay, both have dehorned edges for smooth holster insertion. That's the same thing with the compacts that I compared before. Ruger has a larger extractor. Ruger has laser etching. Smith & Wesson has roll cuts. Ruger has a striker cocked indicator, and the Smith & Wesson slide stop engages the inside of the slide. So I'll start from the bottom up. Just like their compacts, the Smith & Wesson's slide release engages on the inside of the slide right there, as opposed to engaging on the edge of the slide like it does on this Ruger. You see right there that actually engages on the edge of the slide on the outside. That's the same with all their pistols. They're compact pistols, they're full-size pistols, both of them. They all do the same thing. Always inside, always outside. Let's see, the striker cocked indicator on the Ruger is really nice. So you see right here, check it again. You see right here whenever it's cocked, you can see it there, and then you'll see it pop out and disappear. Also when it resets, you see it pop out right there and then disappear again. Also, I mentioned this in the compacts video as well. I like how when the trigger has been pulled on this and the striker is deactivated, that the trigger sits back in the trigger guard, as opposed to the Smith & Wesson, which has a trigger return spring that's always pushing it forward. So no striker cocked indicator, and when it's deactivated, it still sits all the way forward. So at least visually looking at it, you can tell which one's decocked and which one isn't. That doesn't really matter though, because your gun should stay loaded all the time anyway. But, you know, just an observation. Ruger has a much larger extractor. You can see it right here. That's also pretty consistent on all their pistols. Smith & Wesson's is just a little bit smaller. It's pretty consistent on all their pistols, even though I haven't had one mess up before. There's my compact. You see they're pretty much the same. And then on my core, also pretty much the same. So yeah, those features are going to be standard across all of your Ruger SR and all of your M&P sort of features and sizes and stuff. Laser etching on the Ruger here, you can see SR45 right there. It's just a little bit coarse, and you know, a little Ruger thing there, not much to it. This one has M&P45 stainless, and then Smith & Wesson on the other side as a roll mark. So that's just another observation that doesn't really change function. And then they all have smooth edges for holster insertion. You see this is rounded off here, rounded off at the front. This one is nice and tapered here at the front, also rounded off on the top. So those are observations that don't really lean one way or the other. Barrels. Both are 4.5 inches. The one on the Ruger is stainless polished and blasted versus the melanite coated one, but they are both forged. So they both can handle plus P rounds. If you look at them, they are very well built. The Ruger has a loaded chamber indicator, and the Smith & Wesson has a loaded chamber window. So on the Smith & Wessons, if it's loaded, you can see a little piece of brass in there. I do have a snap cap, so I guess I can just show you. If this one's loaded, you can see a little piece in there, just a tiny bit. It's probably a little bit more noticeable on the Ruger. If I just stick this one into a mag and put it in the chamber, you'll see that it is a little bit dramatic, but just like on all their other SR pistols, it doesn't get in the way of anything. So you see loaded went up. Yeah, it's a little dramatic, but you know, as long as it doesn't get in the way in the sights, it really doesn't matter. I don't know why Ruger would design something that would get in the way of the sights. So it does not get in the way of the sight, so there's nothing to worry about in that scenario. Is one better than the other? I don't think it really matters. You should know if your gun's loaded anyway. You should check every gun before you hold it anyway. So I guess this one gives you a little bit more of a visual look before you actually pick it up. Sort of the same thing with the trigger. So you can look at it and see that it's loaded without having to like examine it. But that's also kind of a draw. It doesn't really matter. Guide rods. Both are captive single spring guide rods. I think the Smith & Wesson's design is better, and the Ruger's does not sit tightly under the barrel. So I'm going to talk about the Ruger one after I mentioned the Smith & Wesson one. I showed you a little bit about that earlier when I took it apart. But Smith & Wesson's, single piece, captive guide rod. It's held on by that little nut there. And this is a very well-built guide rod. But the guide rod also is stainless, whereas the one on the Ruger is metal at the bottom, and the rest of the body of it is actually polymer. So if you look, that is a stainless steel guide rod, which I believe gives that the edge, because the design overall is a lot better. Now, this is where I told you the plot kind of thickens with the Ruger. It's a little bit weird. For whatever reason, this is really easy to take out on this full-size gun. I haven't held an SR9 or SR40 a whole lot, so I can't tell you if that would be the same. But for whatever reason, the SR45's guide rod just sits under there loosely. And I actually had to send this one back to Ruger one time, and I'll tell you about that later. And they sent me a replacement spring, and it's exactly the same. You see, it doesn't sit under there tightly. So when you try to reassemble this thing, if you tried to reassemble it with it down, it won't work. You have to reassemble it upside down. And this actually is what puts tension on your little disassembly piece. So when this is in the gun, it's actually sitting like this. And so that really doesn't put a whole lot of tension on this thing. Now, does that mean that if you were shooting the gun that it could spontaneously come apart while you're shooting? No, I don't think so, because the only time that this would actually be able to slip out is when this groove lines up right here. So you see when it's closed, that piece won't come out. There's nothing to worry about there. So it's a minor annoyance. It's a little weird putting it back together and stuff with that thing just dangling there as opposed to sitting in there tight like it does with pretty much every gun. My SR9C was like that too. It actually would hold in there tight. This is the only one I've seen that's kind of loose on the bottom. It hasn't really affected function, but you know, it's worth mentioning because it is what it is. Also, it did say that this guide rod is actually polymer here on the front. So the only part of this guide rod that's actually metal is the base of it, like I showed you when it came apart. But when it's actually in the gun, it's just polymer on the end. Does that matter that much? No. Do I have a preference? Yes. I think this design is better. All right, so for the frame and the grip, we're going to start page 2 here. Both have good adjustability. They have some adjustability. Ruger's backstrap is just that. It's a backstrap. It only provides a hump or a flat part for your actual palm here. It's actually a backstrap. The grip on this does feel really good. You can see it's very slim, it's tapered, and like I said earlier, they come with 10-round magazines, so this is very slim for just about any shooter. It's not wide like a Glock or an XD. An XD may be a little slimmer, but it's a very slim grip. Could you teach a female or a new shooter with small hands how to shoot on this? Yeah, you could, because it's very slim, and I like that design. The Smith & Wesson is more than just a backstrap. It is actually like a palm swell, because it doesn't just engage the back, it's the whole thing, and I'll show you that in a sec. And it also has a beaver tail. Both feel great. It's really a personal preference. I shoot M&Ps more often. I'm more used to this grip, but this isn't my gun. This is a friend's gun. This is one I own, so I don't have any bias here. I'm just used to shooting M&Ps more often. So, with the backstrap, like I said, this is more than just a backstrap. It's really a palm swell, and I think that's what Smith & Wesson actually calls it, because it doesn't just go on the back right here. It actually engages your whole palm. You see how it kind of sits out here? And actually, I have the large one on my M&P core here. You can see that it actually, you know, adds a little bit of width to it. It's actually a palm swell. It sits inside your entire palm. Now, like I mentioned on my compact, this has a little bit less of effect of it being a palm swell because the whole thing isn't sitting inside of your palm. But regardless, I don't see this as just a backstrap. It's more of a palm swell, so you do get more adjustability. Could you teach a female or a small-handed shooter how to shoot on this one too? Yeah, you could, because it has a small backstrap, a medium, or a large. So these would both be good for that. The grip, like I said, personal preference. I prefer this one because I shoot M&Ps more often, but this one's also extremely comfortable. All right, thumb safety. It's standard on the Ruger. It's ambi. It's optional on the Smith & Wesson. It's also ambi. Ruger safety sits lower on the full size and the compact for whatever reason, and it will not inadvertently activate. So I owned an SR9C for a while. I sold it to a friend a while back, if you saw my comparison video of the M&P 9C to it. And for whatever reason, this one actually sits a good bit lower. So like on my SR9C, when I would rack it, I'd really have to watch out for that because the edges are kind of sharp, but that actually sits pretty low. You see there's only a little bit of it that's actually on the slide. So for me at least, I really don't ever have to worry about it. It doesn't seem to bother me at all. Also, it's very, very positive going up, very easy to disengage, and it kind of sits in a little ridge there. You see it sits in a little ridge there, so it's extremely low profile. So yeah, it's probably not great that this has a safety on it, but it will not turn on its own, and it's slim enough to where it really doesn't matter, and you won't really know it's there. On the other hand, Smith & Wesson safety is plastic, mushy, and cheap feeling. I do not suggest you buy one with the thumb safety. So a friend bought this one. Like I said, this isn't my gun. I guess one difference with the Ruger versus the Smith is that the Ruger safety can only be activated if it's cocked. See, once it's not, it won't stay up. Whereas with the Smith & Wessons, it can be decocked and the safety can still engage. But the safety's pieces, these big pieces are plastic, and they're on both sides. They hang out really far. It's really mushy. There's not, if you can hear, it's like a plastic engagement. It's not positive at all. I went up to the firing line a couple times and squeezed it thinking it would shoot, and this had actually gone on by accident. It just feels really cheap, and I don't like how intrusive it is. I would highly advise you not buy an M&P with the thumb safety because when they put it on here, it's crap. I don't like it at all. There's just really no positives with it at all. Now, is it removable if you get one with a thumb safety? I have no idea. That would be something you need to ask Smith & Wesson, or if you just buy your own, buy one without it. There are plenty of guns that come without it. You see this has the cutout for it, but it does not have it. Same thing with my core, does not have it, has the cutout for it, but regardless, it's not there. I would advise you not get one with the thumb safety because it's really bad. Slide release, right hand on the Ruger and ambi on the Smith. And the full-size Smith & Wessons do have that slam feature. So on the Ruger, just one here, not one there. And on the Smith, it's on both sides. And I mentioned the slam loading feature with all full-size Smith & Wesson guns, so this is true here too. You see I have a snap cap. If the slide locks open and you have a loaded magazine and you slam it in, it will load the first round for you. And that seems to be consistent across all of Smith & Wesson's full-sized pistol ranges. I have had some people tell me in comments on my compact video that the slam feature works on their compact M&P, but I haven't been able to get mine to do that before. So I've only seen it on full-size Smith & Wessons. I haven't seen it work on the compacts. And unless your Ruger is very worn and doing that will make something happen, it's not designed to do that. So if you slam a loaded mag in there, it will not close on its own unless it's well worn. This is actually designed to do that. But besides that, the slide releases, both of them are very low profile. I guess this one gives you more flexibility because it's ambidextrous. So this one probably gets a slight edge in that category. Accessory rail, both have one. The Smith & Wesson has more options for mounting, but it's kind of gapped slightly at the front of the gun. So you see the Smith & Wesson's rail has more grooves there, more options. But if you look, it's not like a perfect taper there. You see I can kind of push it together. Now, will that affect accuracy? No, because your accuracy comes from the sights and the barrel being locked up in this upper piece. The frame doesn't really have anything to do with accuracy, at least, combat type accuracy. But for whatever reason, it's kind of gapped there, and you can see me like kind of push it together. So, is that bad? No. Is it cheap? Not really. I guess it's just kind of there. Whereas the Ruger has a very slim and trim look. It's very tightly locked up together. You see there's very little play in the upper and the lower. So this only gives you one groove, but they should be able to mount all of the same things. I'm sure this TLR1HL could fit on either one of these, and both would work just fine and be able to interface just fine. So it just is what it is. Mag release. It's ambi on the Ruger, it's flippable on the Smith. Both are easy to reach and both have large mag wells. So same thing with my compact. When I'm shooting this gun, I find myself dropping the mag out with the right side almost all the time. And the same thing with the compacts too. This engages the front of the mag release. The mag release engages the front of the mags on the Ruger and the side of the mags on the Smith & Wesson. You see the gap is actually right here. Like I said on the Smith, a 14 round mag is an option. That's kind of cool. And one thing that differentiates this from their regular full-size and compact mags is it's actually just a smooth stainless rather than a melanite coated. So their regular magazines for their 9 and their 40 are melanite coated. In the Ruger's mags, they're all coated with some sort of finish like that as well. Kind of feels Parkerized, kind of feels blued. Probably the same thing they use to coat the slide on the top. So just an observation, which mags are better. I don't really think it matters. This one does not have the same weird feature of my compact where I can actually push this and it'll engage. Remember I told you my compact, if I try to push it in with just my thumb, see it won't engage unless I rock it forward. So the full size doesn't do that, just the compact seems to do that for whatever reason. But their mag releases are both good, but I like the Ruger's because it's ambidextrous and it doesn't have to be flipped. So this one to me gets an edge there. Trigger. This isn't a competition. Ruger's trigger wins by a long shot. The shape of the Smith & Wesson trigger is what bothers me the most about it. So Ruger's factory trigger, just like on their SR9C, is really good. Its break is about 4 to 5 pounds. You see a very short take up, and the reset is very audible and short. And you can feel it too. So the trigger on this one is very good. I like Ruger's factory polymer triggers. This one's pretty awful. The take up is really spongy. It's got a lot of travel. And the break is pretty short, but the reset is also terrible. See, it kind of just a click. It's kind of a mush. You can't really hear it that much. And like I said, the shape of this trigger is what bothers me so much. The fact that it's hinged in the middle. So when I'm pushing, this thing to depress it to shoot, it's like my finger's sliding on that thing. It's not one solid piece. If you get an M&P, I highly advise you get an Apex trigger. One piece, short travel, improved reset. Still not as good of a reset as the SR45, but still a better reset. I have an Apex trigger on both of my M&Ps. Now, would I mess with the trigger on the Ruger SR45 or other SR pistols? No. I think it's good from the factory. I didn't mess with the one on my SR9C, and it worked fine all the time. So edge easily by a football field goes to the Ruger when it comes to trigger. Shooting impressions. Well, both bore axes are pretty much identical, so both shoot pretty softly. The Smith & Wesson gobbles up everything. The Ruger has had a little bit of a rough time recently, so I bought it a while back. You'll see here I had some failures to eject, and I ended up sending back my Ruger because it would not eject the round or the case out of the chamber. So it's not that it was failing to eject it and the slide was catching on it, but that it wasn't ejecting it out of the chamber. So I sent it to Ruger, and they replaced a lot of parts, which I will show you their list that they sent me in the box that shows what they changed. But now the issue I'm having is that the magazine spring, the recoil spring is too heavy. So they tried to slow down the speed of the slide to be able to grab the cases, and they also changed the extractor in the spring. But I don't think they really needed to change the recoil spring, because now cases are barely ejecting out the side. Granted, what I shot today were my hand loads. The M&P had very good ejection every time, and the Ruger's ejection was very weak. Whereas the first time I went to the range with the Ruger, it didn't fully eject, but when it did eject, it was very positive. So I think what would fix this would just be a regular recoil spring again. They did replace the extractor, which is good. And actually, I'll mention that Ruger's has excellent customer service, because these are what they replaced, okay? Mag disconnect, which wasn't in there. See, both missing on receipt because I didn't put them in there. They changed the ejector, the extractor, the guide rod assembly, the mag latch thumb piece, and the striker assembly. So they replaced a lot of parts on this gun to get it to work. And also, I like that they sent me this oiled little towel here for storing your guns to make sure they don't rust. So you wipe this down before you put your guns away for storage. I think that's really cool. And they even say in their message, please offer, says, please accept the complimentary Ruger cleaning cloth as our way of saying thank you for support of Ruger firearms. Now, that's really cool. I have to say, yeah, Ruger didn't run 100%, and the Smith's been 100% reliable. The Ruger needs work, we're getting there, but Ruger has excellent customer service. Smith & Wesson's customer service I've never had to use, but I heard it's good. But I mailed this Ruger in and got it back within probably 3 or 4 days. So second day air is how they ship it when they send you a label. I sent it out, and they brought it back to me within like 3 or 4 days, and that's just unbelievable to me. So for customer service, I've used them. They're awesome. Haven't had to use Smith & Wesson's, but I heard they're still pretty good too. Overall impressions, these are what stick out the most to me. Ruger's factory triggers miles better than the M&P's. The M&P has a bit more aftermarket support because more people seem to shoot them. The thumb safety on the M&P is terrible. Just don't buy one with it. I prefer Ruger's ambi mag release. Ruger's factory sights are terrible. Change those too. Smith & Wesson's grip offers more adjustability, and it offers more than the compact as well, because like I said, this only interfaces the top of your palm, whereas this one interfaces your entire palm. And let's see, yeah, Smith & Wesson has a night sight option. So like I told you earlier, these are actually factory night sights. I don't even know if I showed you those. So standard 3-dot, and they're actually really low. I don't like low sights that much, but they're still better than the factory ones on the Ruger. So both are great firearms. I recommend either one. And I will say, allow a company to fix a gun before tossing it out as a bad gun. So, oh, if it doesn't run 100% like my Glock, it's not the best gun in the world immediately from the factory. Well, every company has its lemons. Unless you see the same problems happen a lot, and it happens to you too, then that might be a bad gun. But if it's just hearsay, someone saying it's bad or someone else saying it's bad, give the company a chance to make up for it and fix the problem before you come to conclusion. I'm gonna talk to Ruger, and I'm gonna call them and see if I can have just a regular recoil spring assembly sent to me rather than the more powerful one, and I'll report back and a review on this one of how it runs. If I could somehow combine how it runs with extracting now with how it was ejecting before, if I could find that medium, I think it'll be perfect and this will run great. So you'll see this one in an update video. You probably won't see this one in an update video because it belongs to a friend. Thank you for hanging on for about 30 minutes. If you guys have any questions, post them in the comments.